Welcome to Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. Season 1 of the Wheel of Time TV show is just around the corner and will be streaming on Amazon Prime on November 19th, 2021. So a couple of months ago, I got this crazy idea to reach out to a few people from the Wheel of Time community to spearhead this Eye of the World summary video. The idea was simple on paper: divide the chapters amongst ourselves and summarize the entire first Wheel of Time book as a spoiler-heavy refresher for those who have already read the books but might want a review before the show comes out. Then it escalated, and I got Michael Kramer and Kate Redding involved. Then it escalated some more. It turns out wrangling over 30 people to write and record summaries takes a lot of time and effort. Anyway, this labor of love was the result. Please remember to follow and subscribe to each of these amazing content creators and community members. Detailed info for each person is in the description. And a very special thanks to all of you who participated in this video. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. And thank you viewers for watching. We all hope you enjoy it. Spoiler warning, please come back and watch this after you've read the first Wheel of Time book, The Eye of the World. Prologue, Dragonmount. Leavetaking Telamon is wandering in a mad daze through the rubble of a broken palace and past dead bodies of men, women, and children that he seems not to notice. He calls out to his wife, Ilyena, oblivious to her dead body nearby on the ground. The air ripples and shimmers, solidifying into a man clothed in black who identifies himself as Elan Morin Tedronai. Though clearly mad, Leavetaking recognizes Elan as the betrayer of hope. Elan calls Leavetaking the Lord of the Morning and the Dragon. Using unconventional methods that, quote, follow a different power, Elan Morin heals Leavetaking of his madness, at least enough for him to regain some of his sanity. Elan Morin tells Leavetaking that the Great Lord of the Dark can bring Ilyena back to him. He also says that they have fought 1,000 battles with the turning of the wheel, 1,000 times 1,000, and we will fight until time dies and the shadow is triumphant. In his grief and shock, Leavetaking reaches out to the true source and travels far away to an open area with a river nearby. He draws in so much of the male half of the One Power that a solid bar of bright light obliterates him, leaving only a massive, jagged mountain in his place. The mountain, that would later become known as Dragonmount, pushes the land away, forming an island on the nearby river. Leavetating's last words before his death were,
"Light, forgive me. Ilyena."
And the shadow fell upon the land, and the world was riven stone from stone. The oceans fled, and the mountains were swallowed up, and the nations were scattered to the 8 corners of the world. The moon was as blood, and the sun was as ashes. The seas boiled, and the living envied the dead. All was shattered, and all but memory lost, and one memory above all others, of him who brought the shadow and the breaking of the world, and him they named Dragon.
And it came to pass in those days, as it had come before and would come again, that the dark lay heavy on the land, and weighed down the hearts of men, and the green things failed, and hope died, and men cried out to the Creator, saying, O light of the heavens, light of the world, let the promised one be born of the mountain, according to the prophecies, as he was in ages past, and will be in ages to come. Let the Prince of the Morning sing to the land, that green things will grow, and the valleys give forth lambs. Let the arm of the Lord of the Dawn shelter us from the dark, and the great sword of justice defend us. Let the dragon ride again on the winds of time.
Over 3,000 years later, in a long-forgotten part of the country of Andor, in a region called the Two Rivers, we are introduced to a remote village at the center of that region called Emond's Field. Some people may not know this, but in an attempt to appeal to younger audiences, an additional prologue was written by Robert Jordan and was later shoehorned into the start of the first book. I was thinking of leaving this chapter out of this video altogether, but I can't think of a better way to start off a summary of these chapters than by letting our good friend Andral, the Bard of Time, sing about this second prologue. Take it away, Andral.
Prologue 2. Ravens. Ravens are watching, shearing of sheep. The grain shows worth the dig that runs bone deep. The Two River gathers around Farmer Tam. as he tells the story of the dragon and the land.
Chapter 1. An Empty Road. Meet Rand, your everyday typical sheep farmer / prophesized messiah, travelling down a country road with his pa to deliver barrels of cider for the local village's annual booze up bell time. Unbeknownst to both, they are being stalked by a Nazgul, by a mysterious figure dressed all in black and riding a black horse. The stranger's cloak seems unabated by the bitter wind that relentlessly beats at Rand and his father Tam. As if some transcendent force tugs on a thread of Rand's coat, he turns around and catches a glimpse of the rider before tripping over a miniature replica of the Stone of Tyr. When he recovers, both rider and horse have mysteriously vanished. Bet you're hooked now. There's bigger things to worry about than evil-looking outlanders in the forest, like what you're going to say to the mayor's hot daughter, or how to avoid the myriad of matchmaking housewives trying to set Tam up on Tinder. Welcome to Emond's Field, voted number 14 on bestandorangetaways.com. Home to colourful characters like Zembui the Thatcher, who's worried that this already prolonged winter might continue indefinitely, and that the new village wisdom Nynaeve won't be able to do much about it. Oh yeah, because being a village wisdom means that you can magically manipulate the elements. Oh really? Also home to the village prankster Matt Cawthon, who loves nothing more than covering dogs in flour and releasing badgers into crowds of unsuspecting women. Between bouts of animal cruelty, Matt is also prone to seeing dark-cloaked strangers that bear a striking resemblance to the rider Rand imagined earlier. Bet you're really hooked now. Anything I missed from this chapter? Oh yeah, and there's a Gleeman in town. Chapter 2. Strangers. As Rand and a reluctant Matt unload barrels of cider to the winespring cellar, they are met by Ewin. Ewin informs the two that there are strangers in the village, a man and woman who look like characters out of a fantasy book. Wait. After leaving the inn, Matt convinces Rand to indulge in a little bit of animal cruelty, and the two start hurling stones at a nearby raven. Little do they know this raven is a total badass and avoids the stones without even flinching. This is where we meet the Lady Moraine. Just Moraine. She appears to be neither old nor young, neither tall nor short, with a demeanour of nobility and authoritative air to match. Moraine gives each of them a coin as an advance payment for jobs she might need doing whilst in town, because if there's one thing worth spending good money on, it's the service of three boys who just got outsmarted by a bird. When she leaves, a man who had been blending into the shadows follows her in a protective manner. Before the boys can decide how to spend their newly earned dollar, they are interrupted by the arrival of a peddler, who may or may not have some fireworks for the festival. A Gleeman, fireworks, strangers in the village. This really is going to be the best bell time ever. And with that ominous declaration out there, it's over to you, Badger.
Hello. Thanks, Elliot. Chapter 3, The Peddler. A smiling peddler, Padden Fane, comes into view, driving a laden wagon, and addresses the gathering crowd. Shockingly, he claims that a false dragon has been proclaimed in Gildan, who not only has armies, but can even wield the One Power. Fane insinuates that this man may even be the real dragon. In a final statement to the excited crowd, Fane says that a group of Aes Sedai are riding from Tarvalon to capture the false dragon. Rand, Matt, and Paranibara, the blacksmith's apprentice, discuss the mythology and rumors surrounding the dragon, the Dark One, and Aes Sedai. Nynaeve Almira and her apprentice Egwene Alvir approach, and Nynaeve chides the boys. After Nynaeve leaves to talk to Fane, the village council can't do anything right, Egwene and Rand have an awkward conversation. Egwene shows Rand her braided hair, which symbolizes a significant step for young women in Emond's Field. Egwene has dreams beyond the two rivers. As Rand unintentionally angers Egwene, a white-haired old man strolls into view. Fittingly, I'll let Vance the Gleeman take it from here.
Chapter 4, The Gleeman. The white-haired man is wearing a cloak of patches in hundreds of colors. Rand notices that he has blue eyes, an uncommon feature for many folks in Emond's Field. The man introduces himself as Tom Marilyn, a Gleeman. He asks Egwene to be his assistant at his performance, and she accepts. He takes this opportunity to display some of his skills and recount the stories he will tell them. However, his performance is cut short when he notices the Lady Moraine approach. They exchange greetings, but he leaves on edge and displeased. The village council exits the inn, and Tom retires to the common room for some mulled wine. Tam tells Rand that they're going to head back to the farm for the night. Before they set off, Rand, Matt, and Perrin all decide that they should join the WoTT. Before volunteering, they also decide that they should inform the mayor about the Black Rider they've all seen. However, they delay so that they can gather more witnesses. Rand and Tam set off for home. After walking on the road home for a time, Rand asks Tam why the council questioned Padden Fane. Tam explains that had the village council not questioned him and acted like they were taking actions and making decisions, people would have whipped up into a panic. They also talk about the Black Rider, to which Tam mentions that some of the other councilmen's sons had also seen him. This reassures Rand, and he's resolved that the rider cannot cause any trouble that the Two Rivers folk can't handle.
Breaking news! Winternight, Chapter 5. So Tam and Rand come home, scope out their farm, and they get started on their chores. Chop, stack. Chop, stack. Rand gets lost in the rhythm of chopping wood when Tam calls him and tells him that dinner's ready and to put on the tea. So Rand washes up, thinking about a hot bath after supper, and he sees his father come downstairs with a sword. A sword? Where did he get a sword? Tam mysteriously locks the front door. He's never done that before. And then the back door as Rand pulls a whistling kettle from the fire. Knock, knock. Who's there? Boom! Boom who? Boom goes the dynamite! It's Prologue time! Monstrous half-man, half-beasts, straight out of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, come busting through the door. Rand throws the scalding hot water right in the thing's face, while Tam takes out another 2 or 3 with his sword. Run, lad, he screams. And Rand does. He jumps out the window, and he flees into the woods. Hand over his mouth startles him. But it's just Tam. He made it out alive too, it seems. Okay, so then Tam gives his son a quick TED talk about fighting Trollocs. How does he know so much? And then he starts complaining about the heat while Rand is freezing outside. Rand notices that Tam is wounded with a small cut, but that wound is burning. He'll have to cart him back to town for medical attention, so Rand grabs Tam's sword and he runs to get supplies. The small farmhouse is dark and quiet, but ransacked. Flour everywhere, sugar everywhere, Trolloc poop on the walls. It's disgusting. Basically, it looks like a teenager lives there, which he does. So, one of the Trollocs rises up from playing dead, right behind him, and he suddenly freaks Rand out. He says, "Pardon me, can I speak with you about the Great Lord of the Dark?" No, just kidding. That's not what he said. He said, "Narg, smart." The Trolloc growls, "Narg, stay. You put sword down." After a lovely chat about life, the universe, and the Murdroll hunting him, Rand agrees and the Trolloc lunges. But he impales itself on the sword that Rand got up just in time. That was lucky.
Chapter 6. The Westwood. Rand faces the helplessness of realizing that adults are only fragile people, as he has to care for his father, a feverish Tam. To transport his father, Rand makes a litter to drag. He then straps on the heron-marked blade for the first time. For the rest of the night, Rand drags Tam back to Emond's Field, avoiding the roads and detection by Fade and Trollocs. Talking in his sickness, Tam recalls the events of the Aiel War and reveals he found Rand as a baby and is not his biological father. Chapter 7. Out of the Woods. Rand arrives in Emond's Field with the dawn, dragging his sick father. The village has suffered an attack. Rand first encounters Egwene, who has strangely clean hands. She fetches Nynaeve as the village wisdom to help Tam, but he is beyond her skills as a healer. Rand then seeks help in the Wine Spring Inn from Gleeman Tom and Mayor Bran Alvear. Tom skillfully drives the conversation towards Moraine Sedai, who can help Tam. Tom warns Rand, Sedai do what they do, for reasons of their own, boy. A tired Moraine celebrates the survival of Rand and agrees to heal his father.
Today we'll be reading Chapter 8, A Place of Safety, a Moraine chapter. You can tell by the icon.
But it's not, though. It's a Rand chapter.
Yes, I can't disagree with that.
Rand walks in to see Tam. The important part here is that Tom fiddles with his pipe and then leaves awkwardly. Moraine takes her time and heals Tam, but seems to just be sitting over him exhausted. Rand feels a shiver.
Lan pretends to be human and asks Rand about his sword, and how a sheep farmer came by such a weapon. Rand, surprisingly, does not have much of an answer. Lan explains that the heron marks on the sword are the marks of a blade master. Rand tells Lan that a Trolloc said that a Myrddraal wants to talk to me.
You talk to a Trolloc? That's what Lan says.
It's not I personally. Thank you for covering that up, or clearing that up. Moraine finishes the healing, but Tam may need even more with the use of the Angry Elf, which is interesting.
Agreed. She, Rand, and Lan discuss what the Trollocs were doing in the Two Rivers and who they were after. All the evidence points to Rand, Mat, and Perrin.
By the way, I think we should note that that is some excellent work from the Myrddraal to know everyone's birthday within a week. Excellent work by the Raven, too.
That's so Raven. That's so dumb. That joke's so dumb. Also, Lauren, leave in the part where I say that joke's so dumb, because it is.
Perfect.
He assumes that safety lies in a large city like Caemlyn, and Land kind of dissuades him of that, and he's like, well, the walls are a poor bar to our midral. Like, you're gonna get attacked. Like, it's just gonna be more difficult for them. That's when Moraine says, there is a place of safety, and that's Tar Valon. There you can find answers and find out why the Dark One wants you. And Rand's basically like, a city full of Aes Sedai? That scares me. He can barely handle being in the room with just one.
A place of safety, by the way, is the name of this chapter, Joe.
Oh. Clever, Robin Jordan.
So basically, Rand says, I need to say goodbye to Tam. Moraine responds that he probably won't wake up before we're gone, which we'll see about that. Land sighs as Rand says, I'll go find Matt and Perrin. Moraine stops him, reinvigorated, drawing on Land's strength, it seems. Water bond with benefits.
Land and Moraine leave. Rand is alone with Tam, and his mind reels from the concept that the Dark One wants him. And also Matt and Perrin.
It feels nice to be chosen, right? You know, Mistress Alvira takes care of Rand and Tam and gives off some warm and delicious smells.
Time to pass out and enter the world of dreams.
Chapter 9. Tellings of the Wheel. So Rand sleeps a fitful sleep. He has a series of 3 back-to-back dreams, and they aren't the good ones. First, he finds himself in a barren land, pursued by Trollocs. He realizes that this is the valley of Thakandar at the foot of Shale Ghoul. He hears a familiar voice, and he is drawn to it as it says, "Serve me." A figure clothed in red and black towers before him. Rand runs to the edge of a ledge and leaps into the void. Next, Rand finds himself in a meadow. He sees Dragonmount in the city of Tar Valon. Seeing the city makes him feel safe. He rushes towards the city. However, during his sprint, his feelings change, and he has this sense of being pursued. He then falls into the void again. Lastly, Rand finds himself in the city of Tar Valon, before the White Tower. He tries to run away from it, but no matter what direction he goes, the White Tower's in front of him. People in the streets start telling him, go into the tower, it is your destiny. Rand finally relents and enters the White Tower, where he is greeted by a fade. It's twilight as Rand wakes from the nightmares. He has pains in his side from where he leaned on the sword. Tam finally wakes, and Rand informs him about leaving. Bran and Meryn assure Rand that they will care for Tam. Lan enters the room and tells Rand that there appears to be trouble brewing outside. A crowd has formed outside to confront Moraine. However, she disarms them by telling them the story of Manetheren. Manetheren, city by the Manetheren Dell, waters of the mountain home, was a great kingdom during the Trolloc War. 200 years into the war, King Aemon led his armies to victory at the Battle of Bakar. However, this was a distraction. Word came that the city of Manetheren, capital of the kingdom, was under siege by Trolloc hordes. The city held the siege for 9 days with no aid. As Aemon crossed the Tarendel, he knew no help was coming. He fought a last stand against some of the hordes of Trollocs laying siege to the city. Queen Eldrine had emptied the city of the non-fighting population. She alone was left to defend the capital. At some point during the battle, Eldrine felt Aemon's death. She felt this because she had bonded him as her warder, and in a fit of uncontrollable grief unleashed so much of the One Power that she burned not only the Trolloc hordes to ash, but also the city itself. Not a single person who fought under the Red Eagle banner of Manetheren that day lived to fight another one, and thus the people paid for their land with their blood and were bound to it. After finishing this tale, the crowd feels shame at having confronted Moraine in such a manner. Lan then tells the boys it's time to go.
Chapter 10. Leavetaking. Rand, Matt, and Perrin prepared to leave Emond's Field with Moraine and Lan, but before they can leave the stable, Egwene catches up with them and insists on joining them, and Moraine agrees since, quote, it is part of the pattern now. Tom appears from the loft and also insists on joining them. Although Rand tries to convince Egwene not to come, he does offer up his horse Bella for her to ride, and they are off. They are barely out of the village when Rand sees a strange flying shape in the sky, which Lan identifies as a Drakkar, a shadow spawn, and they are forced to gallop.
Chapter 11, The Road to Taren Ferry. Rand and Matt and Perrin and Egwene and Lan and Moraine and Tom are riding north as hard as they can.
Rand remains concerned for Egwene, who's riding Bella, worried that Bella may not be able to keep up.
Thus, he keeps holding Cloud back a little and urging Bella mentally to please keep up to make sure that Egwene is not left behind.
The group passes Watch Hill, and the boys remark that they wish they could stop at the White Boar.
While traveling, a Drakkar dives at the group, terrifying most of the group.
The group does stop, and Moraine starts to remove the fatigue from the horses, but remarks that when she gets to Bella, she does not appear to be fatigued.
They arrive at Taren Ferry, and Lan rouses the ferryman, Master Hightower.
Chapter 12, Across the Taren.
The group reaches the ferry landing. Master Hightower arrives with 6 men, and they're giving off an air that they might rather rob the group rather than ferry them across the Taren.
Tom produces a knife from his sleeve and twirls it, drawing a laugh from Moraine.
The group crosses the Taren River with their horses on the ferry.
Moraine then creates a whirlpool that destroys the ferry, and Rand feels shivered.
Moraine then creates a heavy fog that covers not only the river, but all beyond, and remarks there are not 10 Aes Sedai who could do as well as she.
They make camp for an hour, and Moraine begins to teach Egwene about the One Power, which is exciting to Egwene.
Tom growls when the Red Aja is mentioned, and Rand notes that he's only ever heard of 3 men that could channel.
Moraine explains that women who can channel must be taught, otherwise they may die.
Those who are not taught, but are lucky enough to survive, often become wisdoms.
Moraine also remarks that Egwene has the potential to go far, possibly even to the Amyrlin seat.
Chapter 13, Choices. The chapter opens with Moraine healing the party. This is met with varying degrees of enthusiasm, with Rand, Mat, and Perrin still not quite trusting Moraine, whereas Egwene, on the other hand, is pretty enthusiastic about the experience. As they travel towards the city of Barillon, Rand and Egwene get into a tiff over her not wearing her hair in a braid anymore, but ostensibly it's more about Egwene having private conversations with Moraine every night, and Rand's anxiety about the fact that Egwene wants to become an Aes Sedai. Tensions are starting to grow within the group. Mat seems to believe that the Shadow Spawn have abandoned the chase, and Perrin still thinks that he's going to be home in Emond's Field within a month or 2. Moraine assures them all that they are still in mortal danger, and even goes so far as to say that, "Before I let the Dark One have you, I will destroy you myself." It's not all doom and gloom. Tom tells stories, and Lan begins to train the boys with weapons every night. When they finally arrive to the gates of Barillon, they're met with a very talkative guardsman who cautions the party to the presence of white cloaks within the city and brings tidings of battles against a false dragon in Gialden. Thus, the party is ushered into the great city of Barillon.
Chapter 14, The Stag and Lion.
So our favorite traveling crew settles in for their stay at the Stag and Lion, and rumor has it that there are pesky white cloaks in Barillon looking for supposed Aes Sedai, and apparently the false dragon Loghain won a battle in Gildan. After they're all settled in, Ron sees Moraine talking to a girl wearing boy clothes, but no time for that now because it's time for bed.
Yeah, so Rand has some super messed up dreams, and a totally normal guy named Baalzamon with fire for eyes and a mouth tries to get him to drink some spooky dream wine, but Rand says no. Then Baalzamon wants Rand to know all about his accomplishments, like how he told Lews Therin to kill all of his family, and how he ran the Trolloc Wars. Then he breaks a rat's back just to prove a point, and it's time for Rand to wake up. Chapter 15, Strangers and Friends.
So Rand wakes up after his crazy dream and finds out that there are a bunch of rats with broken backs all around the inn. Plus, Perrin and Mat definitely had the same dream, so that's bad news bears. Rand meets Min, the girl in boy clothes, and she tells him about the things that she sees. Perrin and a wolf, Mat and a dagger, and things don't look like they're gonna end well for Rand.
Yeah, so Rand runs away from Min and bumps into Padan Fain the Peddler. He's super weird and not looking good, and then he takes off too. So Mat meets up with Rand, and the two of them see a couple of uppity white cloaks, so Mat decides to pull a prank on them, and Rand goes a little bit crazy and he stands in the street to laugh at them. And we meet the head white cloak named Dane Bornhald, and he is not impressed by Rand.
No. So Mat and Rand make it back to the inn, and guess who's tracked them down? That's right, it's our favorite wisdom, Nynaeve.
Min's visions showed her that Nynaeve is part of it, and the 5 Edmunds Fielders are all in even more danger now. Speaking of danger, Rand heads to the back room, where Moraine and Nynaeve are having a face-off. Nynaeve demands to take the 4 kids home. Moraine insists they are safer with her. Nynaeve eventually explains she came herself because the village council was too busy squabbling to agree on a rescue plan. Classic. Later, Nynaeve confirms to Rand that he was born outside the 2 rivers, but reassures him she didn't tell Moraine. Looks like Tam's fever dream wasn't wrong about that part at least.
Chapter 17, Watchers and Hunters. In the common room of the Stag and Lion, Tom shifts from storyteller to musician mode, and it's time to party. Rand dances poorly with the ladies before calling it a night. A surprise Myrddraal appearance makes for a quick departure from the inn. They are met at the gates by white cloaks. Moraine uses the power to appear as a giant to them, scaring them witless as she steps over the walls surrounding Barillon. The Aes Sedai and crew escape Barillon without a fight, and they race down the road, while smoke and flames rise up from the location of the inn where they had stayed. Danger follows them as they race down the Caemlyn Road.
Chapter 18, the Caemlyn Road. The party exited out of Baerlon. They had no idea what they were in for. Now they're staring at over 500 Trollocs, weapons drawn, boxing them in, horns sounding in every direction. It was a flamin' ambush. Lan yells, "For the Seven Towers." Perrin and Rand scream, "For Manetherin." Matt yells, some gibberish in the old tongue. Egwene and Nynaeve snarl, belt knives in hand. Moraine had dropped a bomb. She had said that she is weak in weaves of fire and earth, but regardless, she engages. She grabs her Angreal, and with waves of earth, the ground splits and a wall of fire is formed. For a few seconds, this place was Armageddon.
There was a firefight!
Eventually, the party flees towards a place once known as Arinelle.
Chapter 19, Shadows Waiting. Guiding the group through the city's broken streets, which had long abandoned the name of Arinelle, Lan carries Moiraine inside a white stone building while the rest follow. Nynaeve helps to tend to Moiraine through her skills as a wisdom, while Matt helps convince Rand and Perrin to explore Shadar Logoth. Just before they head back, Matt says he wants to climb a tower, hoping to find treasure. The towers are not safe, a voice claims. The boys leap around to face the direction that the voice had come from. A man was standing in the shadows by the stairs. I am Mordef. Mordef's lure of treasure has Matt running in through the building, while Rand and Perrin vow not to leave him alone. They eventually end up in a tile-walled room with treasure. Matt leaps forward and tries to grab as much treasure as he can. Matt's mention of Tar Valon sends Mordef into a frenzy. It was at this moment that Rand finally realised what it was that had been bothering him. Mordef had no shadow. A goblet hits the ground as Mordef engulfs the entire room. The boys escape back to the white stone building, all the while having this sense that something was watching them from the darkness of the columns. Moiraine is alarmed to hear of the encounter with Mordef and makes sure none of them took anything from him. The story of how Shadar Logoth came to be is told, after which they settle in for the night. Sleep is cut short when Lan returns holding pieces of Trollocs that had now entered the city. The party packs up and they head out into the night. Chapter 20, Dust on the Wind. While travelling through the streets, the party becomes separated as a thin tendril of silver grey fog drifts in between the party low across the street. Just as Rand booted Cloud into a quicker step, Moiraine let out a strangled "Stop!" pulling him up short. The thin splatter of fog had multiplied to lay across the entire street. The unseeing, unthinking Mashadar had entered the fray. You are its food source. If it touches you, you will die, Moiraine tells the group, explaining that they must find their own way back to her and Lan with the help of a red star in the night sky, which would help guide them towards the river. One of the many streets that they ventured down led them into a pair of Trollocs stepping into the same street before them. Both humans and Trollocs stared at one another in shock, each more surprised than the other. More and more Trollocs filled the street as if coming off a conveyor belt, colliding into one another at the sight of the humans. A guttural howl from a lone Trolloc sets things back in motion. "This way!" they all scream as they all gallop off into 5 separate directions, with Trollocs pursuing each of them. Meanwhile, a Fade and 2 Trollocs become Machin Sin's first victims of the night. Eventually, 2 groups are formed while they travel towards the river. Perrin and Egwene have found their way out of the city, while Rand, Matt and Tom are lagging behind. The sound of Trolloc horns sent Egwene and Perrin into a scramble, and ultimately they fell into the river. As for Rand, Matt and Tom, their escape from Shadar Logoth led them to find the large trader's boat of Baal Daman. Upon boarding, Trollocs also jumped on board and a fight ensued. Once the Trollocs had been disposed of, the price for passage was agreed upon. That price cost both Rand and Matt their Tar Valon marks that Moiraine had given them.
Chapter 21, Listen to the Wind.
Nynaeve recalls escaping Shadar Logoth, how the Trollocs had ignored her to pursue the boys, and begrudgingly admits that Moraine is right about the boys being in specific danger. She tracks down Moraine and Lan and eavesdrops on them as they discuss the events of the night before, when suddenly, Moraine calls out to Nynaeve by name, shocking both her and Lan. Moraine reveals that Nynaeve can channel the One Power, a claim that Nynaeve initially rejects with disgust, but Moraine backs up her claims with proof, and Nynaeve reluctantly accepts the truth. She agrees to join them as they track down 2 of the 3 boys, but demands to know what Moraine intends to do about finding the others. Moraine explains simply that they cannot follow them all at the same time, and Nynaeve has to once again accept Moraine's argument, despite the pain and frustration that bring her to tears.
Chapter 22, A Path Chosen. After dreaming of working Master Luhan's forge, Perrin awakens in a small copse of trees on the other side of the Arinelle. His horse is gone, along with his cloak and saddlebags, and anything else he has still is soaked. Before too long, by a growth of willows, Perrin sees a lone hoofprint that holds the double crossbar trademark of Master Luhan. Following the tracks, Perrin soon finds Egwene. Egwene attributes her survival to her horse Bella. Nice. And Perrin decides the best chance of surviving the pursuing Fades and Trollocs directly to Caemlyn to look for Moraine. Chapter 23, Wolfbrother. Perrin and Egwene are traveling and living off the land. Egwene tries to use the One Power to light the nightly fire, but never really succeeds. As they avoid farm and village alike, they find an old fort, ruins from a time long past. The smell of smoke and cooking meat brings Perrin to investigate, and he finds
a lean, sun-browned man was leaning against one of the limbs not far from the flames. He was the strangest fellow Perrin had ever seen. For one thing, his clothes all seemed to be made from animal skins, with the furs still on. His cloak was a crazy quilt of rabbit and squirrel.
The man introduces himself as Elias Matura, and Perrin notices that he has vivid yellow eyes. While talking, Elias orders the pair to keep still as his friends have arrived. 4 wolves.
Hopper, Dapple, Burn, and Win, a little-known boy band from the 80s.
Enter the campsite and make their ease at the fire. The wolves find the humans with whom they can communicate. Elias says the wolves say that Perrin can do it. Dapple decides that the pack and Elias will accompany Perrin and Egwene down south to guide the pair towards King.
So let's start right with chapter 24, Flight Down the Arinelle. We start here in the chapter in a dream. It's actually Rand's dream, but Matt and Tom are also on the boat, and where they are in the waking world is working their way down the Arinelle on Doobie Baeldoman's boat, the Spray. Rand is in a strange place. He's being chased by Balsamon, the guy with like the fire in his eye. It's kind of crazy, and he winds up in like this hedge-thorn maze thing, and ends up pricking his finger on a thorn, and he escapes into like all these mirror maze worlds, and he wakes up. The weird thing about the dream though is he wakes up and the blood's still there on his finger, the thorn's still there. And then next we learn that Gelb, our good friend Florin Gelb, has been spreading vicious rumors about Rand and the boys because Rand curb stomped him when jumping on the boat. Tensions are high, so Tom decides to start doing some Gleeman stuff and starts to teach Rand and Matt how to do that Gleeman stuff. And Rand takes it way too seriously and kind of get to his head, because next thing you know, he's at the top of the mast. Which, if you're not a sailor like I am, the mast is the long stick pole that's in the middle of the boat that goes up really, really high. Yeah, Rand's at the top of that, which is like super dangerous without like a harness or any kind of boatswain's chair. And he's just kind of like doing like a Titanic, I'm the king of the world type thing up there. And everybody's like, dude, get down. You're crazy. So Rand's like, sure. Jumps on the forestay. It's the cable that runs in the front of the boat and like slides down like all like majestic, like does like a flip onto the front deck. And everybody kind of claps and goes like, wow, I guess that was on purpose. That's chapter 24. So move on to chapter 25, The Traveling People. So we switch now to Perrin and Egwene. Of course, they're traveling with Elias and the wolves, and they've been traveling for quite a few days. The wolves are kind of keeping their distance, but Perrin can still sense them now, which is kind of freaking him out. He realizes this, that, he's been having dreams, but Balsamon's not been in his, but a wolf's been guarding it. And then all of a sudden, 2 other dogs, not wolves, come running out of the forest, and they find that they're next to a tinker camp, which is called Tinkers, or the traveling people, are, in the old tongue, just swallow the words Tuathathon. Yeah, so they go there, find the Tuathathon, the traveling people, and hang out for a night there, get to meet Rain, and you learn more about the Tinker tradition and the Way of the Leaf and the peaceful hippie commune that they have. Meanwhile, Egwene's going off like all googly eyes with this new guy named Aram. Last thing we get is pretty much they tell a story about how when they were traveling in the waste, some Aiel came up to him, which is like unheard of, apparently, for Aiel to talk to Tinkers. And the quote was, Leaf Blinder means to blind the eye of the world. He means to slay the great serpent, warn the people, lost one. Sightburner comes. Tell them to stand ready for he who comes with the dawn. Tell them, and then she dies. And that's all we get for these chapters, so we move on to the next one.
Chapter 26, Whitebridge. Here we jump back to Rand, Matt, and Tom Marilyn as they finally arrive in the town of Whitebridge. Disembarking the spray, they go looking for information, hoping to find that Moraine and the others are here, or have been through. What they learn instead is a couple others have been looking for all of them. A scrawny-looking crazed man who shifts confusingly from whining begging to commanding demands. And then another fellow who R3 quickly recognized from the description as a Fade. They've got to get out of Whitebridge now. Too late! The Fade appears as they try to go. Tom gives Rand his Gleeman cloak and instruments with instructions to get to Caemlyn and find the Queen's blessing. Then he covers their escape with a direct attack on the Fade. His screams follow the boys as they escape out the town gates. Chapter 27, Shelter from the Storm. Perrin and Egwene, with their guide Elias, spend many days sheltering with these Tinkers, also known as the Traveling Folk, the Tuatha. For Perrin, this is a time of frustration, worried about Trollocs and Fades, oh my, and challenged by the Way of the Leaf. If attacked, these people will be slaughtered, won't even defend themselves. Egwene has no such frustrations, enjoying learning from these kind, accepting people, dancing with Aram, and experiencing the many aspects of Tuatha life. Elias keeps them with the traveling folk for many days, trusting a sense that it isn't time to move on yet. And though these days are frustrating to Perrin, he does appreciate that his dreams at least have finally been peaceful. That is, until a night when Baalzamon appears again. A dream where we discover the wolves have been shielding Perrin's dreams. Now, Baalzamon has broken through. As Perrin is attacked in the dream, Elias wakes him. It's time to go.
Chapter 28, Footprints in Air. We catch up with Nynaeve as she, Moraine, and Lan are approaching Whitebridge. They head into the town where half a dozen buildings have been burned down. Moraine consoles the townsfolk and they all give her different stories about what happened. After a silent meal at an inn, Moraine reveals she knows 2 of the boys were there recently, but they will be going after the 3rd boy somewhere to the north because she is able to track him. Chapter 29, Eyes Without Pity. Perrin, Egwene, and Elias are traveling quickly but still very cautiously. The land turns into rolling crests, and as they're scouting, they suddenly spot a flock of ravens bursting out of the trees below them. The ravens decimate an unlucky fox, and a tense race away from the birds ensues. During their run, Perrin reveals to Egwene that he can talk to wolves. Things look grim, but they reach safety, a setting that contains an old statue of Arthur Hawkwing.
Chapter 30, Children of Shadow. Just as soon as Perrin, Egwene, and Elias get comfortable and light a fire, Elias jumps up, kicks the fire out, and tells Perrin and Egwene to run for it and hide.
He doesn't really go into any more detail than that. He just kind of freaks out and tells them to hightail it and that he'll come later.
The wolves tell Perrin that there are men coming who smell wrong. And wouldn't you know it, some white cloaks show up.
Eventually they bumble into Perrin and Egwene and start yelling at them to drop their weapons and surrender and that they won't be harmed. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Hopper attacks the white cloaks and he gets killed in the process, and then Perrin just goes totally bonkers with rage and he blacks out.
He and Egwene wake up imprisoned by the white cloaks, where they learn that after he blacked out, Perrin killed 2 of them, and he probably will be hanged before long.
Chapter 31, Play for Your Supper.
Rand and Matt are working their way down to Caemlyn Road, and they're out of money. And Matt will not hear of selling that dang dagger.
They start working at farms in exchange for a place to stay the night, and eventually they wind up at the Grinwell farm. The farmer's daughter, Elsie Grinwell, really likes watching them work.
Like, she really
likes watching them work.
Later that night, Rand and Matt play the flute and juggle for the Grinwell family, to much acclaim, and not only from Elsie.
Rand and Matt leave the next morning at the not subtle request of Elsie's mom, and decide that performing at inns is a much less sweaty and intimidating task than working on farms, so that's what they're gonna do.
Chapter 32, 4 Kings in Shadow. Matt decides that he would rather die than be rained on, and for some reason Rand agrees, so they ignore the giant red flags and perform in the sketchy inn. Where they luck out because the malefactors who are planning on murdering them are drugged by a creepy dark friend who wants to kidnap them. They barricade themselves in their room, which is more or less a dungeon. Then Rand wishes real hard for a way out. Lightning strikes, and they pick their way through crispy villains and walk off holding hands in the night. Chapter 33, The Dark Waits. A confusing flashback, a Baalzamon comeback, and heart-wrenching moments of tenderness populate this chapter as our two besties cuddle and care for each other while Matt recovers from blindness and Rand is mysteriously ill. Also, dark friends. Rand punches a dumb one in the face and stops Matt from killing a really dangerous one. Side note, if they have him kill her instead in the show, it will neatly trim at least 2 plot lines.
Chapter 34, The Last Village. So 3 nights have passed since Rand and Matt escaped Howl Goad, and they're snuggling inside of a haystack to sleep for the night. Matt is feeling very gloomy, wondering if they'll even survive to make it to Caemlyn, let alone Tar-Valon. When they get to town the next evening, they narrowly miss a Myrddraal, giving their descriptions to someone before they snag a ride in someone's cart to get out of town. The cart driver tells them about the Andoran royal family, including their open support of the White Tower and Queen Morghase's Aes Sedai advisor, Elida. Matt and Rand drift off to sleep before awakening outside Caemlyn.
Chapter 35. Almond Bunt rolls into Caemlyn, and Rand and Matt are all agog because they are buck-toothed hayseeds, and Caemlyn is way bigger and more ethnically diverse than anything they've ever seen before. Bunt drops them off on a side street, advises Rand to get rid of his fancy sword, and bounces. Matt is all twitchy and paranoid and convinced that they're going to die, and Rand is like, dude, can you be cool for like a second? They ask for directions to the Queen's Blessing, and on their way, they see people wearing red or white cockades, armbands, and cords. They have no idea why they're doing this, but Rand buys some from a vendor to hide the herons on his sword. They get to the Queen's Blessing and meet Basil Gill, who is a gentleman, a scholar, and a good Queen's man. Rand says they're friends of Tom, but Tom is dead and shows Tom's flute as proof. Gill is like, yeah, I'll believe that when I see his dead body, and says that he'll give them a room and some food. Master Gill fills them in on Tom's past, namely that he was a court bard in Caemlyn and Queen Morghase's lover, but blew that all to hell when he left without a word to go help his nephew. When he made it back, Morghase was real mad, and Tom barely made it out of town with his head attached. Master Gill says that Gareth Bryn, the Captain General of the Queen's Guards, and some other old-timers probably remember it. Chapter 36. So Master Gill settles the boys down with some food and is like, so you are up to your ass in something. Why don't you tell me what? Rand spills the whole story, except for the stuff about fades and whatnot, and says that they're hoping to meet some friends, but are headed to Tar-Valon regardless. Master Gill is like, yeah, you're gonna want to stay away from Elida because the whole Tom thing will not work in your favor and stuff in the city is just messed up. But he gets called away before he can explain what that means. Someone takes Rand and Matt to their room, and Matt lays down and refuses to get up, like a moody teenager, so Rand goes back downstairs to try and find Master Gill. Master Gill is nowhere to be found, so Rand hangs out in the common room for a bit and then heads to the library, whereupon he screams like a banshee because there is apparently a Trolloc in there. But it's not a Trolloc. It's an Ogier named Loyal, who is chill as hell. Loyal left the steading, which is the home to which Ogier are bound, and if he gets caught, he will be in big trouble TM, because he's only 90 and not old enough to go on vacation by himself. He comments that the world seems to have changed a lot compared to the books that he's read. Loyal keeps calling Rand an Aiel and is like, the heck? When Rand says he's from the Two Rivers and asks why he's so far from home. For some reason, Rand decides to tell Loyal the whole story, including the stuff he left out with Master Gill, and Loyal is like, dude, you are ta'veren, and your friends maybe are too. Which is a person that the pattern weaves its threads around. Loyal wants to travel with Rand because he figures traveling with ta'veren will be tight as hell, but Rand is like, no bruh, it is too dangerous and I am super worried that my friends are already dead. And Loyal is like, that'll be fine, dude. And Rand is like, okay.
Chapter 37, The Long Chase. Lan tells Nynaeve that her help is needed to rescue one of the boys being held prisoner by the White Cloaks. Her job is going to be to cut the horse line so the horses will run away when Moraine gives the signal, which will create a diversion they can use to free the prisoner. Using her considerable woodcraft skills, she sneaks up to the horse lines and begins cutting the ropes. She's terrified, knowing that there are hundreds of armed men nearby, and considers giving up before the job is done, but she steels herself and continues, only to find that the last horse on the line is Bella. Which means that whoever is in that camp, Egwene is with them. She also realizes that this means they're going to need an extra horse. She unties Bella's reins as well as that of another horse and waits for Moraine's signal. Lightning strikes the ground, which causes the horses to rear, and she holds onto them with all of her might. She then climbs on Bella's saddle, holds onto the other horse's reins as they ride off into the night.
Chapter 38, Rescue. So Perrin and Egwene are still being held captive by White Cloaks, and they're being beaten and abused regularly as suspected dark friends. Perrin hears the wolves say, "Help comes," moments before Lan shows up to free them both. They escape the camp amidst chaos created by Moraine, eruptions and lightning tearing up the camp, and they all escape on horses that Nynaeve stole from the White Cloaks, including Bella. Lan also shares some of what he knows about Wolfbrothers with Perrin, and the group focuses on finding Rand and Mat.
Chapter 39, Weaving of the Web. Rand wants to go out and see Caemlyn and Loghain, but Mat refuses to go with him. Master Gil warns Rand that a mad beggar has been asking after him in the city, and he will be outnumbered in the crowds as a supporter of Queen Morgase. Rand has learned too late that the red wrappings he chose signify support for Morgase, while those who wear white believe that the Queen and Tarvalon are to blame for all of their problems. Rand tries to make his way into the inner city, but he is driven off course when he sees the filthy beggar disturbing the crowd. He finds himself at the base of a hilltop wall and decides to climb it to try to get a view of Loghain. At the top, he can see the palace gates, the guards and soldiers, Aes Sedai and warders, and finally Loghain, in a cage but managing to appear like a king. The crowd screams in fury and hatred at Loghain, and Loghain only laughs. As Rand wonders aloud about the Aes Sedai, a girl's voice suddenly answers him, which startles him into falling backward and striking his head.
Hi everyone, it's John from WoTTube, and welcome back to Chapter 40 and 41 of The Eye of the World. Now, Chapter 40 is my favorite chapter in the entire series because, let's face it, we meet everyone's secret favorite character, Gawain. And of course, he is mine as well. This chapter starts off with Rand having a nightmare, waking up and deciding to walk the streets of Caemlyn to clear his head. Once he's out there, he decides to climb a wall to get a better look at the procession for the false dragon Loghain. Now, he falls into this garden because, well, he takes a look at Loghain and he gets scared and just kind of tumbles backwards. Now, when that happens, he is helped up by none other than the daughter heir of Andor herself, Elaine Trakand, and her brother Gawain. Now they talk for a bit, and then they're joined by their half-brother Galad. Now Galad promptly runs off to go tattle on them because that's what he does best. He does exactly what he thinks is right. The guards show up and escort Rand to see the Queen, Queen Morgase, Queen of Andor, and after some emulation of what everyone else does around him to appear cultured, he meets a Aes Sedai for the first time who has a foretelling about him, saying that basically there's a whole bunch of bad stuff coming and Rand is at the heart of it. Morgase talks a little bit about Andor, talks a little bit about the Two Rivers and their major exports, and then lets him go rather than throwing him in the dungeon like Gareth Bryn wants. Now, on the way out, he does talk with Gawain, and Gawain does say he's a little confused with how Rand looks because if he wrapped a shuffer around his head, he'd be the image of an Aiel man. Chapter 41 starts with Rand rushing back to the Queen's blessing to tell Basil Gill exactly everything that just happened to him, even though it is completely incredulous. Now, while telling the story, he's interrupted because all of his friends show up. Moraine, Lan, Nynaeve, Egwene, Perrin, they all end up in the kitchens of the inn. Rand goes and they have a little minion reunion, and he leads them up towards his room where Mat is sleeping while he's telling them the story of meeting the daughter heir and everything that's going on. Now, when that happens, they meet Mat. Mat starts to talk to some of the people in the room. He talks about Perrin's secrets. He makes fun of Nynaeve, thinking that she's pretty. He talks about each and everyone in the room until Moraine gasps and hisses, says that Mat and the dagger are very, very dangerous, and throws all the Emonsfielders out.
Chapter 42, Remembrance of Dreams. Rand brings the party to the library and everyone meets Loyal. Moraine heals Mat and they rejoin the party, and Rand proceeds to word vomit his encounter with the Trakans and Elida. Double kudos to him for mentioning how beautiful Elaine was. "Who's Elaine?" asked Egwene. But finally, this is where it all comes together, because of Taverne. Loyal randomly mentions a man 20 years ago, saying that the Dark One intends to blind the eye of the world and slay the Great Serpent. This makes Perrin mention the Tinkers telling the same story. This ends with the boys finally confessing about the dreams of Baalzamon, who tells them the same thing about the Eye of the World. Click, 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 the way is clear. They need to go to the Eye of the World. But how? The last of the Tavern pulling becomes clear. There's one way, the ways. And Loyal just happens to be an ogier who knows how to navigate them. The chapter ends as Loyal cries, "No! If we enter the ways, we will all die or be swallowed by the shadow." Chapter 43, Decisions and Apparitions. Loyal explains what exactly are the ways. Shortcuts throughout the world connected by a waygate, where time is irrelevant and you can take one day for a 5-day journey. These were gifted to the Ogier by the male Aes Sedai during the breakup. Unfortunately, it was made by Sidon, so it was tainted until Machin Shin, the Black Wind, took over the ways, sucking souls and hunting travelers. And Moraine was like, "Yep, thanks Loyal, we have to go through there and you're the guide." They planned late into the night, but when night came, the dreams come again. Baalzamon had 3 clay figures that looked just like our 3 boys. Baalzamon taunts Rand about the Aes Sedai using him, and Rand tries to deny him. They wake up to Moraine telling them it's time to go. Time is running short.
Chapter 44, The Dark Along the Ways. The boys are woken before dawn and proceed to the backyard, upsetting the chef on their way to find the stableman ready for them and Loyal complaining about the lack of light and how he doesn't want the horse as his feet have always been good enough for him. Loyal guides them to the gateway without faltering and eventually they find it in the basement of a building. Moraine magic taps the lock off the door and they find a massive room below. Loyal laments that although in a strange place now, the area they stood in was once an Ogier grove, and its loss touches him deeply. The doorway is revealed, and with a shimmering of the Avendasora leaf, the ways are opened. Loyal gives many warnings about the danger of the ways, and how time and distance are skewed as bizarrely evidenced by the second island appearing to be placed above the first, despite no obvious signs of support anywhere. As they journey along, the group comments on how alien the ways feel, but soon their focus is drawn to Loyal as he discovers a broken bridge along their chosen route. Chapter 45, What Follows in Shadow. Nynaeve accuses Moraine of leading them to a dead end, but Moraine points out that there are many paths that can be taken in the ways. Loyal tries to convince Moraine to take the route to Stedding Shangtai or Tarvalon, but Moraine is determined to go to Fal Dara. Eventually they stop for the night, and when Moraine sets no wards, Nynaeve questions her why not. Moraine explains that Sidene would taint anything she wove, causing the group to settle down in glum silence. Moraine tells the group that she thinks Tom is still alive, that he is part of the pattern weaving around them. She includes visions described to her by Min, which can only be true, and this lifts the group's spirits a tad. This brings talk of their journeys apart, including some playful ribbing over Rand and Egwene, over Else Grinwell and Aaron respectively. The boys continue to question Rand over Min and Else, which frustrates him, and then Moraine visits each of them, telling them that their dreams are safe with her nearby. The morning brings shocking situations. Lan talks to the person following them, which will only ignore if they continue to stay away from the group, and then a guiding, the means by which Loyal finds the route, is found tarnished with Shadowspawn script. Moraine realizes that this is how the monsters have been getting around so easily, though the melted group nearby that Lan sees shows it is still not safe even for them in the ways. As they continue on, Rand notices a wind, which at first is reassuring and then concerning as he remembers Loyal's warnings. Their faces pale as they realize the danger upon them. "How many more bridges?" Moraine asks. "2, Loyal replies, before dashing to lead them out. As the wind gets louder, they find the doorway out has the Avendasora leaf missing, causing Moraine to bring her staff up in full blowtorch mode, cutting through the door. Lan and Mandab crash through the door, and Moraine turns her staff on the Black Wind as the group escapes. Moraine appears just before the Black Wind fills the doorway, though it is unable to escape, much to Moraine's relief. The group suffers the horrible whispers before heading on to Fal Dara.
Chapter 46, Fal Dara. Out of the ways and into the borderlands. Clearly, our 2 rivers babes are not Canadian if this is the first time they've heard of trees exploding from a little frozen sap. Our naive baberonis make their way to Fal Dara, taking in the abandoned villages en route. Rand tries to institute a no girls allowed policy regarding the Green Man. but our fierce braid tugger quickly sets him straight. Egwene feels guilty for dancing with Ram as Rand reflects on the prophesied friend zone sitch he and Eggs are heading towards. Thanks, Min. They arrive in Fal Dara and are told to keep their hoods down. Hashtag not a fade. Loyal gets the recognition he deserves with a shout out of "Glory to the Builders!" And our dear Lanold also gets a titch of recognition with some Daishan cries. We meet Raggan and Ingtar, the latter of whom leads us to Lord Algebra, or Egomar's study. Moiraine explains that they gats to go to the Eye, and thanks but no thanks for the offer of lances. Have fun in Tarwin's Gap, though. Drama heats up when good old Paddy Fane is dragged into the room. He gollumed his way through the ways, and Devs has not showered in a hot minute. Pataroni Macaroni calls Algebra the Great Lord multiple times. Unfortunately, flattery gets him nowhere, and Moiraine skips off with the Laninator to question this garbage human before he can be bathed. Gross. Chapter 47. More Tales of the Wheel. Because our villagers are basically children, Lord Algebra treats them to a story. The story of Lan. Friends, grab a fan, because this is going to get you hot and heavy. Or it should, if you're naive. Basically, Malkier was doomed. Lan was given a sword and a locket while he was still in the cradle, and then his parents swore the oath of the Malkier kings on his behalf, to stand against the shadow so long as iron is hard and stone abides, to defend the Malkieri while one drop of blood remains, to avenge what cannot be defended. Ordinarily, I would say you can't bind a baby to a contract like this, but I guess Lan isn't your regular baby. Moral of the story, Lan is GOAT, and you're in the best hands possible if you're really thinking of saving the world with only 7 people. Moiraine and Lan return, and we learn that Padden Fane has been a dark friend for 40 years. 3 years ago, he hung out with our buddy Balzi, who was given some super scent abilities to track the boys. Post-Winternight, a Fade bullied him a bunch, and then Balzi had to intervene and force the Fades, and Fane, and the Trollocs to follow our group into Shadar Logoth. Unlike the Trollocs, who didn't know where anyone went, Fane figured out everyone was on their way to Caemlyn, tracked them through the ways, and then Mash and Shin decided he and Fane were bros, so he left him alone. We learned that the Dark One has impressed part of himself on Fane. Also, Fane managed to keep a secret from Moiraine. Got a secret, can you keep it? Because Fane sure did. Unfortunately, Moiraine doesn't have time to figure that out because she's got to take the triple T's, Tavirans, to the eye of the world. Good night, happy snoozing. Tomorrow, we hittin' the Blight.
Chapter 48. Leaving Fal Dara and passing forces making for Tarwin's Gap, our party makes their way into the unnaturally warm Blight. Trees, leaves, and even rocks bloat, seeping ichor and stench. Lan explains that even a simple-looking stick can have an infectious bite, the only cure for which is amputation. Despite Lan's discomfort, they camp near within sight of ruined Malkier. The two rivers folks debate swimming nearby, though a monstrously grotesque cephalopod breaks the surface of the water, quickly silencing them. Moiraine Sedai weaves a ward of invisibility around the campsite. Rand also overhears Lan heartbreakingly turn down Nynaeve's advances. He explains to her that he thinks he will die bloody and soon, not wanting her wedding gift to be a widow's veil. Chapter 49. Breaking camp, Moiraine cleared all vestige of her channeling from the prior night. Nearby, Egwene and Nynaeve shiver despite the heat. Twisted beasts stalk them but stayed away, Moiraine expounding that they avoid those who can channel. Trees in the distance writhe and lash out, causing an unseen creature to scream in horrible death. Lan rode off on their back trail, returning his sword dripping with acidic black blood. Harried by all manner of the monstrous denizens of the Blight, they rode through a gauntlet of plagued limbs of both flesh and bark, cleared by swords, arrows, and balls of fire thrown from Moiraine. She alerts them that her channeling will alert half-men to their presence. Several sharp screams silence and freeze the Blight itself. Worms, Lan warns. Creatures of the Blight feared worms. All they knew was hunger. Giving chase, the worms close in on the party. Lan prepares to sacrifice himself to buy them time. As Rand also briefly considers doing so, the Blight changes abruptly into a beautiful clearing, full of flowers and unmarred trees. Greeted by a huge living mass of human-shaped flora, the Green Man, Someshta, greets all of them. Though loyal, he embraces as little brother, Perrin as Wolfbrother, and Rand as a child of the dragon. pointing out that his sword is an oddity. He was surprised by Moiraine finding him twice, though he resolves to take them to the Eye of the World.
Chapter 50. Meetings at the Eye. The Green Man leads Rand, Moiraine, and the rest toward a cave, explaining that just as the breaking of the world began, 100 Aes Sedai, both men and women, died, creating the Eye of the World. Once inside, they find a pool of pure Sidene, untainted by the Dark One, enough to mend the seals on the Dark One's prison, or break it open.
Upon exiting the Eye, the group is approached by two decrepit old men, one of whom is unable to speak and is wearing a mask, a frozen, laughing face. The one who is able to speak introduces himself as Aginor, the other, Balthamel, the two Forsaken. The group attacks with futility. Lan hesitates momentarily between protecting Moiraine or Nynaeve.
The Green Man reappears and demands they leave. He attacks Balthamel and kills him by bursting his body with plant life. I mean, awesome. But unfortunately, the Green Man is also killed in the process. The others run as Moiraine begins to attack and hear her screams behind them as they flee.
Chapter 51. Against the Shadow. So Rand runs away and Aginor follows him, growing younger. Aginor talks some trash, and then we see the cords, connecting Aginor to the Eye. Rand begins drawing on the cord as well. Aginor panics, draws as much as he can, and bursts into flames. Rand thinks, I gotta get out of here.
Rand appears at Tarwin's Gap and sees the good guys getting overwhelmed by Shadow Spawn. He pulls lightning from the sky and fire and earth from the ground to destroy the evil forces. Then the Creator straight up talks to him, tells him he can't interfere and it's all up to Rand. Some stairs appear in the sky.
Rand climbs the stairs and then reaches a familiar door from his dreams. He opens the door and Balsamond is there. Balsamond also has a cord, and this one's black. Now Balsamond starts to talk a big game about all these plans he's laid, and then he starts to show Rand some visions, including his dead mother, Carrie Althor, being tortured. Rand gets good and angry and creates a sword of fire. He cuts Balsamond's cord, then shoots him with fire to seal the deal. Balsamond disappears, and Rand falls into nothingness.
Chapter 52. There is no beginning nor end. So Rand wakes up after cutting Balsamond's black cord and doing all kinds of confusing stuff, and then he sees that there is nothing left of Aginor but some ash and clothing and stuff. Rand then runs back down the hill that he ran up when he was running away from Aginor, and he finds Egwene, Nynaeve, and Moiraine still alive. Moiraine is lying down, recovering from her fight with Aginor, and Rand tells her that he killed the Dark One, and that he channeled the One Power. Now Moiraine says she suspected, because she's not stupid, and then she agrees to keep it secret with Egwene and Nynaeve for the time being. Mat, Perrin, Lan, and Loial come out of the cave, and they tell everyone that the Eye of the World is gone, but they found the Horn of Valir, the Dragon Banner, and one of the seals to the Dark One's prison, albeit broken into pieces. They decide to make a camp there for the night to recover. Chapter 53. The Wheel Turns. When they wake up, the Green Man's garden is dying as the Blight is swallowing it all up. Now before they leave, Loial sings a tree song to the giant oak that is the remains of the Green Man, with the intention of keeping the Blight from killing that too. They eventually get back to Shinar, and they hear of a great victory at Tarwin's Gap. They go see Lord Agomar, and he tells them that during the battle, Agomar saw someone channeling. He also tells Moiraine that Padan Fain is still secure. Moiraine tells Agomar that the Horn of Valir has been found and that it must be taken to Ilion. 7 days later, Rand starts talking to Egwene after sparring with Lan. He tells Egwene that he is going to go away, and Rand claims that he is never going to touch the One Power again. He'd even cut his own hand off before he did it. The chapter and the book end with Moiraine eavesdropping on the two of them and then whispering to herself,
"The prophecies will be fulfilled," the Aes Sedai whispered. "The dragon is reborn."
The end of the first book of The Wheel of Time.